Hello and welcome to GreenFleet Talks. I'm Gill Nowell, founder of Hosted by Gill and Global Women in EV Day and a co-founding director of EVA England, and I'm delighted to be your host today. Today's episode is supported by the AA, and I'm so pleased to be joined by Duncan Webb, Fleet Director at the AA. In this episode, we're focusing on commercial fleet decarbonisation and the practical challenges that fleets face as they transition vans and heavy goods vehicles toward zero tailpipe emissions. The UK has recently passed the milestone of 1,000 new zero emission trucks, but they still represent just over 1% of new sales. And this really does highlight how complex this transition remains. So, Duncan, let's begin with heavy goods vehicles. I think while progress is being made, adoption of zero emission trucks is still relatively limited. So, from an operational perspective at the AA, why is decarbonising the heavy goods vehicle sector proving so challenging compared with other fleet segments?
Yeah, it's a great question in terms of the challenge it faces. So at the AA, we are actually at our HGV level, we're actually bang in line with that 1% actually in terms of where we're at. So we definitely have these, but I think the use cases for HGV market are far more specific to each company that runs HGVs. There is hundreds of different business models that companies run out there. So if I relate it to us and the challenge we face, in particular, our trucks are double manned, which means they run about 20 hours a day. And we literally do not get the dwell time in that time, that 24-hour span, to recharge the vehicles back to full capacity to operate again. And then the physical cycle time that we need to drive out on the roads in terms of mileage is not enough to be done within one single charge. So those two factors alone are inhibiting ours. We have to basically run one shift rather than two shifts on a truck, which isn't the best cost scenario in terms of outcome. So our sector is very different in roadside recovery, though it'll be very different to just a backbone logistics company who are doing home delivery. Even home delivery compared to hub to hub delivery will be a very different business models. But there's going to be quite a few use cases where it does absolutely work, which is why you see a tick up of what's going on. It's not why you see mass adoption, though. That whole ability to recharge and a life cycle that's only probably in the 200 to 300 mile range tops at the moment.
That's so interesting. And where you have been able to switch to battery electric on the HGV front, what are the drivers thinking and feeling about that?
Oh, they love the trucks we've given them. They absolutely love the EV trucks. And one of our big fears is we do have power takeoff equipment on our HGVs. So we have a powered slide bed that would deploy down. And we were always concerned that would drain the energy source and would limit our mileage even further. But it's the one thing we should have been least worried about as a business, actually, because what we're finding is the whole regenerative braking systems and energy systems that regen the power back in generates 10 times more regenerative power than we use to deploy one of our slide beds in the first place. So one of the positive outcomes is very much that whilst we have onboard power needs, it's actually not been as big a worry. And I'm sure others might find that when they go down that use case as well. So that was one really pleasing thing, but it is literally the cycle time for recharging that's given us the real problem statement for mass adoption in this space. And we've made them work in dense urban geographies, so London, Birmingham, Northwest, because the work's there to do, and the fluidity of work is there for us in particular.
That's really interesting. So it's clear, as you've said, Duncan, that HGVs, face very specific challenges, particularly around the cycles and the charging and so on. But thinking about van fleets as well, and they are also navigating their own transition. And whilst zero emission van registrations are increasing, adoption remains relatively gradual. So, again, from the perspective of the fleets that the AA work with, what are the unique challenges that van fleet operators are facing when transitioning to zero tailpipe emission vehicles?
Yeah, and we should take the positives. Whilst ZEV targets were maybe not being achieved, okay, the van sector's come a long way in a short time and is starting to accelerate. Parking at home versus depot, I think, is going to become the main challenge. So if I take each of those models, we park from home, as do many other big fleets, as do a lot of SMEs. We will only ever be able to get so much density of overnight charging at home because of just the practicalities of where people live and driveways and everything like that. So it leaves you a residual balance, which means you've got to do on street charging. Yes, it gives us a productivity knock, but I think it gives everybody a productivity knock. And being that, that's not a unique statement to any company. Is if you're going to go for EV, you've got to accept that there's going to be a bit of product human inefficiency along the way that you've got to price into your business models in some way. I think we're still blessed with some technology that's maybe getting a little bit dated in the EV space, but we're also blessed with the fact there's a lot of new stuff coming as well. And in particular, some of the older stuff is going to be updated in the next couple of years, and there's new entrants coming into the market that we see all the time. So I think we are still in a challenging phase though, and I don't want to hide from the fact that it's behind the ZEV curve that UK PLC wants everybody to be at, and I think that will be something that probably has to be recognised over the coming 12 to 24 months, that it is behind, and therefore what is the alternative options? Okay, because I'd rather carry on a progressive path rather than you stop or people don't take the challenge forward because it's just too much at this time. I'd rather see progression on a continued basis.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty undeniable. Battery technology is improving rapidly, isn't it? And I've been really impressed with sort of the latest electric vans on the market and the ranges that they can achieve. And I think the charging at home challenge is, as you say, very, very real. And hopefully there's emerging solutions to support drivers who do need to sort of charge on street overnight. But technology is playing a growing role in helping fleets to manage vehicle performance, for example, and charging and operational efficiency. So, in your view, Duncan, how can technology really help fleets to overcome the challenges of moving to zero emission commercial vehicles?
Yeah, there's a few things. Just making sure you have the basics, which a lot of good operators do. Just route planning, so you are actually only driving what you need to drive. I know that sounds simple, but it still can be a bit hit and miss. Speed that you take to get there, it absolutely a factor in relation to how many miles you can squeeze out of a kilowatt. Very, very real. So actually limiting top end speed on a van is not as much as a problem statement as most people think. In actual fact, it's quite an easy way to actually say, it might take me a couple of minutes longer to drive somewhere if you need to use the motorway network, but in actual fact, you'll get there and you're able to be productive there. So we still, I think, whilst technology is helping, I still feel everything is a bit progressive and incremental. And the one thing I think everybody in the van sector is almost hoping for is this breakthrough, some sort of breakthrough in some way, whether that be solid state batteries or something else. But it feels like we probably do need a breakthrough to flip the van sector to be in absolute mass market in terms of its approach.
Yeah, really interesting, Duncan. Thank you. And of course, I suppose decarbonising commercial fleets is not only about switching vehicles. You know, many organisations are looking at a broader operational strategy to reduce emissions. So, beyond vehicle electrification, what other strategies should fleets think about as part of a holistic decarbonisation plan?
You know, at the end of the day, how you get there, the vehicle is just one factor. So you spoke about the vehicle a lot. You know, the driver, you can do lots around the driver in terms of how they act and behave and speeding, all that sort of stuff. So that's absolutely there. We are a believer in alternate fuel technology in terms of HVO fuel in particular, and it's absolutely got a place, not just at the HTVM. We actually think in the van segment, and we'd almost like HVO to be more ubiquitously available on petrol pumps, okay, because it is delivered in the same way as diesel. So it's almost like, why not? If the demand's there, companies may pay the premium to get that. So HVO fuel is definitely there. And cutting out the journey in the first place, again, different companies, different business models. So we use a lot of remote technology because cars are really quite clever now, or vans are really quite clever. We'd log on and we'd try and fix something remotely for a customer before we try on the deployment, because that's the most environmentally friendly way we'll ever deliver service for our customers. But what we're finding is, as the vehicles have become technologically advanced, with the right OEM partners, we can say, right, well, I'll log on to that and I'll remote fix you and or do a temporary fix to get you from A to B sort of stuff. So, you know, the best journey is the one you don't travel on all dimensions. But there's pathways people can pursue, even if you've got an operating model that can't have electric vehicles right now. There's pathways people can pursue to still reduce their total footprint right now.
Yeah, thank you. And looking ahead then, so what combination of vehicle technology, operational change, and infrastructure investment do you think will make the biggest difference over the next few years?
I personally believe that the physical range of a vehicle is the number one concern for a van operator, and that being able to be delivered without a compromise on what you can carry. So weight of vehicle, size of vehicle, because if we all end up having to drive bigger vans because of the batteries weigh so much, so legally you have to comply with weight regulations, you know, you're not winning by saying, oh, well, it's okay, I'm an EV now, but I'm now driving a big van rather than a little one. So that for me is, don't create unintended consequences, I think, from your decisions you take.
Yeah, thank you, Duncan. And Duncan, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a really insightful conversation. You've shared valuable perspective on the operational realities facing commercial fleets and the important role that organisations like the AA play in supporting those fleets through this transition. And for our listeners, today's discussion really highlights that decarbonising commercial vehicles requires not just new technology, but also operational planning, partnerships, and the right support systems as well. Thank you to everyone listening. If you found today's discussion useful, please do keep an eye out for future episodes of GreenFleet Talks, where we'll continue exploring the people and the innovations that are shaping the future of fleet decarbonisation. And so until next time, thank you for joining us.